Thank you very much, Natan Golan. I would now like to introduce President and founder of Alma, of the Alma Center, Lieutenant Colonel Sarit Zehavi, who will open the first session of the conference about the historical opportunity to oust Hezbollah in Lebanon. Obviously, I'm not going to speak only about Lebanon. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here today. I'm very excited to be here for so many reasons. I want to open this conference, this first session of this conference, with on a very personal note. As you know, that's what I usually do with my briefings. It's always never not. It's always not only personal. This house, this is my father's house in Damascus. During the previous weekend, President Trump gave us a lot of surprises about this. Eric Manzel will talk shortly about the American U.S. policy in the region, but one of the fascinating things about the latest visit was the handshake between Trump and the president of Syria. Eating hummus in Damascus is a term that every Israeli is familiar with, but who knows, maybe it'll become possible. And this is a current photo of my grandfather's former home in Damascus. My grandfather passed away on December 8th, the day when Syria fell, and not a day passes when I don't think about him. He had a very strong influence on who I am today, and it was very important for me to mention him today. My father loves loquats. It's my father loved loquat fruits, and when I saw this photo, I saw those leaves. I saw the leaves in in the corner of the photo, and anyone who lives in the Galilee knows that can immediately identifies that as a loquat tree. It's in our backyards between the olive trees and the lemon trees, and that's why I know now. Now I understand why my father loved the fruit so much, because it grew in his household, in his childhood home. And I said that if there really is a normalization agreement, I will be the first person to board a bus to Damascus and taste the fruit of my father's loquat tree. But is that even plausible? How imaginary is this scenario that I just described? We're going to talk about that during the panel led by Yaakov about Syria shortly, but this session will focus on Lebanon. Last time we met was last May. Several weeks later, Hezbollah increased its fire against northern Israel. You can see this very clearly in the graph, meaning that in Kfar Vradim, where I live, and there are many people here from my town, we felt that the walls were closing in on us. We felt that there was more fire, and I want to focus on that for a moment. It's a completely different experience than those experienced by the people from Tel Aviv when the Houthis shoot fire at them. We have 15 seconds to get to the safe room, and it's almost impossible. The head that you see in the video is my husband. We took this video from our balcony last August. What you can see here is the Iron Dome and the rockets being intercepted. This was our experience of the war. Just a few seconds later, we ran to the safe room. This happened so many times, and we hope that this reality is not something that will resume. During the war, there were over 5,000 Hezbollah attacks. We didn't count rockets at Alma. We don't know how many projectiles there were, rockets, drones, missiles, etc. We counted attacks. That was the right thing to do from the research perspective. Total of 46 civilians and 83 soldiers were killed. Today we're going to talk about rehabilitating the north, but it's important to note that the rehabilitation of the area is both physical, working the fields, rebuilding the houses, but it's also mental, it's also emotional. It will take time. The situation right now is that about 60% of the residents have returned. There are places where there are 100% return rates, and in other places the situation is much worse. It really varies from one place to another. We're going to talk about that later on. When residents ask me, and they ask me all the time whether they should return home, I tell them that the security situation on the Lebanese border has never been better. But the big question is, will it stay that way? And that is what Tal and I are going to discuss right now. We divided this amongst us. I'm going to talk about everything other than Hezbollah. Now let's talk a little bit about the terms of the ceasefire in November. In July, I went to the Congress and I had three messages to relay. We needed a deadline. We had we needed effective enforcement and disarmament, and not a withdrawal, not just withdrawal. Hezbollah could not withdraw from where it lives. Statements like that are very misleading and irrelevant. I thought that I was successful. These three things are included in the ceasefire agreement. However, the deadline was given to Israel and not to Lebanon, 60 days to withdraw from Israel. Of course, that did not happen. And ultimately, Israel is maintaining 5 points on the border. And this, with regard to the ceasefire, or what we call cease between the fire, there have been almost 400 attacks since the ceasefire, which is an average of 2 per day, reserving the right and the capability to take action. And I think this is very, very important. However, I also want to say that the North relies on tourism, and it's very unpleasant to come to the beautiful, relaxing Galilee for vacation and hear the explosions in the middle of the night. And that's the dilemma. How do you create a normal life with that type of sound, with those sound effects in the background, which are not quite normal at all? UNIFIL is certainly not helpful. Just over the last month and a half, we had 11 violent incidents between UNIFIL and the army. In this case, it's probably Hezbollah. I'm sorry, the sounds of the video is too loud. I can't hear her. It's interfering with our efforts. LAF is one of the main one of the greatest question marks that we have, because the Lebanese army, as we hear in the media, both the Israeli media and the international media, that they're trying, they're working, they have excellent PR, and they say that they're working. They talk about it all the time. The army talks about finding 500 weapons stores in Lebanon, 500 weapons stores. Hezbollah weapons may be belonging to others, and I ask, but where are they? IDF published so many photos of the Hezbollah weapons that they found in Lebanon, but where are the weapons that LAF found? And the only photo that we have, I think this is maybe the only photo. There's one other video. This is it. And here too, it's public relations. There is an American, there's a French representative standing here looking at the rockets that don't look anything like the sophisticated weapons that we know that Hezbollah has, that the IDF found and retrieved from Lebanon. Now, before we talk about the decision making by diplomats and leaders, there are residents. There are 60,000 people and tens of thousands of people like us who weren't evacuated, who lived with a deep sense of fear, fearing that Hezbollah would invade the Galilee, and then lived through genuine risks, genuine threat posed by the missiles and rockets to our lives. And these people here in the photos need this proof that Hezbollah is indeed being disarmed. We need to see this proof with our very own eyes. The woman who lives in Avivim or in Sarit on the border, that woman has to see this proof with her own eyes, to see those 500 stores. If there are 500 stores, then we should see 500 photos. And we don't have that. Now let's add to that we know that there are commanders in the Lebanese army, their names are here on the screen, that are very problematic. They have been collaborating for many years, and we've been familiar with these names for many years. They collaborate with Hezbollah, very actively, hiding the military actions of Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, and this is not something that we can tolerate. If Lebanon insists that it has changed face, if the president of Lebanon, the prime minister of Lebanon, tell the Americans that they're doing something different now, then they have to prove it, because talk in the Middle East is nice, but it's not always related to action. And here's an excellent example. On Tegros, the U.S. envoy to Beirut tells the prime minister of Lebanon that Hezbollah cannot be part of the government, and receives a promise that Hezbollah will not be part of the government. And then she gets on the plane, goes back home, and on the media, he says, I founded a government that's apolitical, meaning that doesn't have politicians. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't include members of Hezbollah. And that very day, this poster was published on social media in Lebanon. And if you know how to read Arabic, then you understand that it says 5 ministers with poking a finger in the eye of the Americans, at the number 5 on the American flag. 5 ministers that are the 5 ministers in the government appointed the ministers. 2 were appointed by Hezbollah. They are physicians. They may be wonderful people, but they were appointed by Hezbollah. And 3 were appointed by Amal, who are not politicians, but those are the ones who appointed them. I hope I have my facts right. Is it? Now, the situation is complicated, which means that on the one hand, things are happening there, and we say things that we say are wonderful. But on the other hand, and Alma is the one in charge of the good news in Alma, so he'll talk about Hezbollah shortly. There are things that are going in the right direction, and this is an example. The Hariri airport is a significant affair. The Hariri airport was in the hands of Hezbollah, complete freedom of activity there. Hezbollah insisted on that. It went out in the streets in 2008 to make sure that they had complete control over the airport. But now Iranian flights cannot land in Hariri, and if they do, it's only diplomatic flights. So while aircraft still can land at the airport, it's on a much lower scale than Hezbollah would have liked. This is money that was stopped at the Hariri airport. We don't know how much money was not confiscated and managed to get through, but we have a general idea. 30 employees at the airport were fired by the government for being Hezbollah supporters. These are positive directions, but as I said before, it's a positive direction, but it's still inadequate. And I'm often asked, what do the Lebanese think after that whole mess, after everything that happened? What do the Lebanese people think? Do they support Hezbollah? Do they continue to support Hezbollah? Now, first of all, we have to stop talking about the Lebanese people, because Lebanon has a very diverse population. There are those who traditionally object to Hezbollah and those who traditionally support Hezbollah. And what we ask at Alma from the research perspective is whether the people who traditionally support Hezbollah and receive all of the services, as you will see in the video, they receive fuel. This is a Hezbollah video, of course. Pharmacy services with an Iranian flag in the background. Supermarket, ambulance services, healthcare services, and banks. This is the symbol of the Hezbollah banks. That once you receive all these services, go vote. Now, this is a month of municipal elections in Lebanon. Next week it will be southern Lebanon. We'll have more information. There were already elections in Bekaa, and there Hezbollah won. So those who traditionally supported Hezbollah, at least according to the information that we have today, continue to support Hezbollah traditionally. Of course, there are changes, but these voices are not enough for me to be able to say that the trends are changing. That, unfortunately, that's not the situation. Another question that I'm asked, I talked about normalization with Syria, and during one of the webinars that David mentioned before, I was asked about normalization with Lebanon, and that day I received this photo. A photo of Sheikh Muafa Tarif with the president of Lebanon, Joseph Aoun. And after this photo was released, it kind of boosted, it gave a boost on social media, the Israeli social media, of course. It kind of showed that hope that they're willing to shake hands with an Israeli sheikh who presents himself as a global cleric, and for good reason. So he said, okay, maybe this is just the beginning and we can start talking from here. However, Joseph On immediately understood the situation and released a clarification statement saying that no, I didn't know who he was. So I highly doubt that he didn't know who this man was, but the fact that he had to make that clarification gives us a sense of what is happening in Lebanon and how far we still are from normalization. Again, unfortunately, I wish that wasn't the case. I hope I don't have any spelling mistakes on this slide. I tried to correct all of them. But it was very important to conclude with this. I don't usually like to put text in my presentations, but there were a few things that I wanted to say about what can be done. We cannot, it doesn't make any sense that Hezbollah is considered a terrorist entity, but in Lebanon, it's a legitimate political party, a social movement. And when in Lebanon they talk about disarming Hezbollah, the president says we'll do it with through national dialogue. And this term national dialogue is something that I remember from before the previous war, before 2006. I know that what I've said now, people will say you must be dreaming. There is no chance. There is no chance that that the Lebanese will agree. But I'm not here to talk about whether there are chances or not. I'm here as an Israeli saying what has to happen in order for there to be a better future for Israel and for Lebanon. And as long as Hezbollah is a legitimate entity in Lebanon with its banks that operate in Lebanon, with UNIFIL, as I talked about before, and the Lebanese army that really isn't helping us build confidence. I don't know how we'll bring a change without these things happening, and there is an opportunity for change now. I've said this many times. This is a golden opportunity for change because Hezbollah is struggling now. But we cannot continue we can't continue fooling ourselves. And I think that the state of Israel now, the way it's operating from the security perspective, is being very clear about this. We cannot continue fooling ourselves after October 7th. And therefore, even in Lebanon, we can't reach a state of normalization in a situation in which there is an entity there that can continue to threaten us. This has to be completely uprooted. Now, I would now like to introduce head of the research department, Tal Be'eri. We like to joke together, but I must say that he is responsible for a lot of the achievements of the Alma Center. Many of these achievements could not have been reached without Tal Be'eri, who very powerfully leads the research department through the war and through fighting, and with so much creativity. He brought things that I couldn't have even imagined that we could have done when I first initiated this project. Thank you, Tal, and now the floor is yours.
Well, good morning, everyone. I will ask in the next 15 minutes and answer, do we now have a real opportunity to get rid of Hezbollah with an emphasis on its military force to disarm it, or is it actually a dangerous illusion? To answer this, I will attempt to examine the organization's current condition, focusing on its military condition with some political, ideological, and demographic context. This review actually presents a special report that we've only just released that examines this question. and this analyzes the Hezbollah's status in depth. On November 2024, Ibrahim El-Amin, the editor of Hezbollah's mouthpiece, Al-Akhbar, wrote that the current confrontation is just another round in the war to destroy Israel. He added that Hezbollah will rebuild and become strong again. This sentence encapsulates Hezbollah's worldview: no peace, no compromises, one ideology, which is ongoing armed resistance. This brings us to the distinction between the outward appearance, Hezbollah's apparent weakness, the removal of its signs in Beirut, and that is all on the media, work, operations at the airport that do or don't bear fruit, and a talk about disarmament of Hezbollah. Versus the reality where Hezbollah still has an army, no less, and behind the scenes works to rebuild it with Iranian assistance. Israel has managed to strike Hezbollah's leadership hard, both the political leadership and the military leadership. More than 170 senior figures, commanders, and knowledge hubs were eliminated, beginning from Nasrallah at the top to the mid-level command. The political leadership, the current political leadership headed by Naim Qassem, is a leadership that is gray, lacks charisma, and may not actually have the field's trust. To date, there is even information about a sort of an internal discussion about a leadership change, which the Iranians and Naim Qassem will need to decide about. And I mentioned the Iranians first for good reason. The military echelon is also significantly weakened. We understand that Mohammed Haider is acting chief of staff, but he doesn't have operational experience that is significant. Alongside him is Haitem Ali Tabtabai. We understand he is currently Hezbollah's Southern Front commander. He is a clearly operational figure. Unlike Haider, he has an impressive military record, but tension and friction exist between them, creating internal crisis that has an impact downwards as well. It is very possible that Tabtabai is undermining Haider's position and sees himself as more suitable to be Hezbollah's chief of staff now. Two other figures who have gained prominence due to the war are Wafik Safa, Hezbollah's coordination and liaison officer. He's involved in port smuggling, all of the ports, not just the airport, but also the seaports, and also Haj Khalil Khab, commander of Unit 133, formerly known as 1-800. He is involved in Lebanon-Palestine operations. We believe that they were responsible for the March 2023 Megiddo Junction terror attack alongside the Radwan unit. With regard to Hezbollah operatives, out of a military force of around 100,000 before the war, we estimate that Israel has hit about 15% of them. We're talking about roughly 4,000 killed and 10,000 wounded, many from the operational core. The Radwan unit. This is the unit that was supposed to invade the Galilee, suffered a devastating blow, and is now unfit to invade the Galilee, at least temporarily. 31 of its commanders, you see them on the screen, the most senior ones were killed, including the unit's commander Wissam El Tawil and his successors, and hundreds of its operatives were hit. The threat posed by the original invasion plan is no longer relevant, and even a reduced version is unlikely. However, and this is a however that we need to remember, the threat of small cell infiltrations remains and always will be. As of now, Radwan have begun to rebuild their capabilities, and their operatives are present in southern Lebanon. With regard to Hezbollah's tunnel network, with the 5 types of tunnels and underground infrastructure, it seems that the relevant tunnels for an incursion, I'm talking about the incursion ones and the access ones, they appear to have been discovered and neutralized along the contact line. However, Hezbollah still maintains extensive underground infrastructure, including tactical and strategic tunnels that were not harmed north of the Litani, where the IDF did not maneuver, and also in the Bekaa area. There, large amounts of weaponry are stored. Some of it, we believe, is ready for use. A good example is the vast infrastructure east of Nabatea that was bombed on May 8th, which contained tunnel and shaft infrastructure. With regard to the booby trap tunnels, their status is unclear. Factually, Hezbollah hasn't used them at all during the war. With regard to the geographic units in the south of Lebanon, these units, Nasser and Aziz, were hit very hard. So much so that the Badr unit north of the Litani that was less affected is helping with their rebuilding, also in the south of the Litani River, which is outside of its original jurisdiction. You can assume that because of the severe harm to the command chains, infrastructure, and operational continuity of Nasser and Aziz, Badr's resources have been redirected to support the areas originally under Nasser and Aziz. Hezbollah operatives are finding it really difficult to stay and operate near the contact line as of now. But in this area too, they're still present, and Hezbollah is using new old tactics in order to try to overcome these difficulties. It is acting to flood the border region with civilian caravans from an NGO called Izru Ze Leze, in Hebrew, help one another. These are allegedly for civilian purposes, but in practice, some are designed to be disguised Hezbollah posts. You may have noticed that there are those who attack them methodically, these buildings. Once one of these structures is positioned, it is being attacked. But what is more important, and history always teaches us, that we cannot ignore the similarity to the pattern of operation of the Green organization. They were active just before the incursion into the Galilee. Before the war, Hezbollah had around 75,000 rockets and missiles. Today, we believe they have between 20 to 25,000. And this enables it theoretically, and I emphasize theoretically, to launch dozens of rockets per day for a year, depending, of course, on the number of launches that it has. The strikes in Beirut on March 28th and April 27th in Dahia district, these strikes targeted buildings storing drones and precision-guided missiles. So we understand that not all advanced conventional weapons of Hezbollah were destroyed. Now, to date, Iran is deeply involved in the reconstruction and operational intelligence security efforts. The same applies to the financial efforts. Professional Iranian experts from at least 6 units of the IRGC are physically present in Lebanon, mentoring Hezbollah closely, using dedicated investigation teams that analyze the reasons for the failures. They draw lessons and they make structural changes and adjustments, starting to train the next generation. Ultimately, the goal is to get Hezbollah back on its feet, maybe not today, but within a few short years. We believe that the recent reports on Iranian advisors being evacuated from Lebanon for fear of being killed are part of information warfare, no less. 2 key components for Hezbollah's rebuilding and strengthening. One, the first, is independent weapons production, and the other is smuggling of weapons and funds. The collapse of the main arms corridor through Syria makes these even more critical. The May 5th airstrike near Nabi Shit, Janta, right on the Lebanon-Syria border, targeting the underground facility, which in fact was Hezbollah's largest precision missile factory, that shows that Hezbollah hasn't given up on its intention and attempts to resume independent production and rebuild its arsenal of missiles. The fact that this is already the fourth strike on the same site, that indicates Hezbollah's determination to renew and rebuild its missile arsenal. So how are the smuggling units adapting their routes? The first way is a direct maritime route from Iran to Lebanon, arrival at a Lebanese port or at sea, and rendezvousing at sea, opposite Lebanon. The other is a combined indirect maritime, air or land route from Iran to Sudan, and from Sudan to Libya via land, and from there to Lebanon via the sea. Another route is an air route for money smuggling via Iraq and or Turkey. You can see in this photo, in this slide, Hussein Ali Nasser, deputy commander of Hezbollah's unit 4400. He was killed in on April 20. He's taking a selfie at the Baghdad International Airport. This is one of the routes for money smuggling. I also don't rule out the Turkish land route, which already in 2007, an Iranian weapons shipment was intercepted there on Turkish soil. It was bound for Hezbollah. And lastly, there is the renewed smuggling via the Syria's land route. Against the background of Syria's instability, Iran and Hezbollah haven't abandoned their intentions to reestablish a foothold there. We believe motivation exists, and this can be done through new collaborations with local forces based on various interests, mainly in exchange for money. You have to understand the Syria-Lebanon border is around 400 kilometers long. This means that every 3 kilometers or so, there is some kind of an informal smuggling path, also underground routes, and through it, almost anything can be transferred. And if you think that the Hezbollah procurement agents don't know this, then you need to think again. The Iranians were not sad, to say the least, when learning of the reduction of the deployment of the Iranian forces in northeast Syria. And should this happen also in southeastern Syria, then I estimated that Dara province will again be exposed to Iranian influence and presence. What can we learn about Hezbollah's recovery process in the south of Lebanon since the ceasefire? From figures that we have since the ceasefire, we know that the geographical unit operatives are present in south of Lebanon, including south of the Litani River. Since the ceasefire, Hezbollah is continuing significant military activity reflected in fixing infrastructures, becoming stronger with weapons, etc. There is also intention to perform terrorist acts in Israel and worldwide. IDF does work on a daily basis against these attempts, but if we try to characterize these targeted killings by the IDF, you can see, for example, that it targets in this way geographical unit operatives who are involved in intelligence gathering, arms transfers, and logistics. It also targets Radwan unit operatives, people who were busy rebuilding the operative preparedness of preparing terrorist attacks, and also senior figures responsible of special operations, somebody who was in charge for rebuilding communication infrastructure, engineering officers, and the deputy commander of Unit 4400 and Unit 3900. These commanders as well, who were busy planning terrorist attacks in Israel and worldwide. So to conclude, Hezbollah is still functioning, still alive, but the damage it has sustained is enormous, unique, and deeply felt. Targeted killings have had a substantial effect on Hezbollah. The idea that everyone is replaceable may not fully apply to Hezbollah. Eliminating a significant number of key figures in a short period of time has proven that not everybody is replaceable, and this has deeply affected Hezbollah's current functioning and its ability to develop a new generation. There is a crisis of trust between operatives and leadership, and also among leadership and the command ranks themselves. The sense of intelligence penetration has paralyzed Hezbollah operationally and led to a loss of confidence And this continues due to the near daily targeted killings, including this morning. Radwan, Nasser, and Aziz's three major units have suffered severe losses, including restricted freedom of action in southern Lebanon. The operating environment, both local and regional, is less favorable. In Lebanon, there was a new president and government, a stronger army. Others have become bolder. And in the region, the Assad regime collapses, the oxygen supply of the Iranian corridor has been severed, and the internal, domestic, and international situation of Iran is relevant here, and also very strong American involvement. Having said all that, now comes the but. It's a big but. Will Hezbollah truly disarm? We have to remember the core of Hezbollah, the armed resistance, is not a means, it is an identity. The ideology and motivation for the resistance to destroy Israel remains intact, and the Iranians are strategically committed to rehabilitating Hezbollah. Within Hezbollah, they make arrangements for all of the base and all of the municipal services. The Shiites are now between 35 and 50% of the population, depends who you ask, and the demography is the quiet ultimate weapon of Hezbollah. This rifle on Hezbollah's flag that you see, that is not a decoration. It is not a decoration. It's a statement. And I quote Nasrallah, they will take our souls before they take our weapons, not because we love weapons, but because they are a symbol of honor and pride. Perhaps this is a historic opportunity to significantly weaken Hezbollah, but dismantling it, I'm not optimistic. This is an organization driven by a sense of mission and strategic patience. Lebanon's current process might even lead to the opposite situation of internal escalation, and possibly in such a scenario, Hezbollah may behave like a wounded beast, and then there will be a civil war. Hezbollah only needs time and patience. The question is, does Israel have that same patience? Hezbollah made a strategic mistake when not immediately and fully joining Hamas on October 7th. In such context, Ibrahim Akil, who was in charge of operations in Hezbollah and responsible for the Radwan force, is said to have said that there is no such thing as half war. Either wage an overall war against Israel, commencing with an extensive incursion into the Galilee, or nothing at all. Akil was right, and from Israel's perspective, it's good that Nasrallah did not listen to him. Israel severely hurt Hezbollah, but did not crush it. Israel will continue to fight an ongoing battle against an ideological enemy that is patient and sometimes sophisticated. And therefore, we don't have to ask whether there is a historic opportunity to get rid of Hezbollah and its force, but the question is whether Israel has the patience required in order to continue to weaken it constantly until Hezbollah is no longer relevant. And in addition, does the country of Lebanon have the ability and a desire to confront Hezbollah? As I mentioned, the full analysis is found in a special report that we've just published. Thank you very much. We have time for 2 or 3 questions from the audience. We'll gladly answer some questions. Miri. First of all, it was fascinating. It wasn't as depressing as you said it would be, because you said some good things as well. I'd like you to address the issue of whether, or if Israel doesn't address this, then what do you, Sarit too, what do you think on the side of the Lebanon state? What can it do against Hezbollah, if at all? I mean, ultimately, it has weakened. It is part of Lebanon. This issue that we always asked, how much more Lebanese, how much more Islamic resistance, but in my head, this is constantly the model of Iraq, of what happened in 2003 in Iraq, what was done to the Sunnis, what it led to in Iraq, and how is it reflected in Lebanon. Let me just say, I'm laughing because this statement of Iraq model, I say it and they tell me stop saying it. There's a lot of disagreement between us. So I say it in the context of what will happen if Hezbollah says, you know what, no problem, I will just join the Lebanese army. It's all okay, it's all good. That just happens in Syria as well. So I just continued your question. Tal, please answer. So as you saw, I'm less optimistic, even though I've learned to be more balanced, in my opinion. But as I said, in the end of my words, the issue of Hezbollah in Lebanon, if ultimately it will pushed against the wall and things will be more extreme for it, I believe that it is likely that there will be a civil war of sorts, because ultimately Hezbollah is not going to give up its status in Lebanon, its ability to carry weapons, the ability of an independent army. That's how I see things. And to wit, some of the examples that I gave, if the Lebanese state does as much as it purports to do, and as much as the Lebanese army advertises 500 sites, then okay, where was the site in Abatia? Where was the site in Janta? These are the key sites. So this leads me to tell you, even based on several indications that we see in Lebanon, it is very possible that there is a coordination of sorts, above the table and under the table, in the some sort of coordination, saying, we'll take care of this side, that side, and this one. Are these sides you Hezbollah, you're willing to give up on these sites? Okay, but then you're not allowed to touch our important sites. And ultimately, I don't see circumstances where the state of Lebanon, to answer your question, as I said earlier, disarms Hezbollah. I don't see a situation of this kind. Any more questions? What impact did the U.S. brokered ceasefire have? And if there was no ceasefire, could Israel have completely dismantled Hezbollah? I'll answer in English. I don't think that Israel's goals were to completely dismantle Hezbollah. The goals were to lift the threat of the rockets and the threat of invasion. I do agree.
That, as we've seen, it's not enough to bomb by airstrikes. And as Tal said, what the Lebanese army it's not enough. So I think a few more weeks maybe could have done better, but I don't think we ever try to dismantle Hezbollah completely, because it's not just a military militia, because it's much more than that. And that's why you need the Lebanese here on board as well.
What needed to be neutralized is the immediate threat. You always have to remember the clock, the international clock. And that's what has been done. The imminent risk in the form of Radwan's invasion, that was neutralized. That possibility does not exist anymore now. But I'm not talking about what we should have done. I'm talking about what we need to continue doing. The state of Israel has to continue, in my opinion, even forever, to continue to hurt Hezbollah and weaken it and aspire to make it as not relevant, as irrelevant as possible in the entire Lebanese area, under this title of rehabilitation. So everything that is defined as rehabilitation, Israel has to land blows on it each day, every day, until as long as necessary. Another question from the back there. If you can just wait for the microphone, please. Hi. If if there's no UNIFIL, then what is the alternative? What do you propose if there is no UNIFIL? Maybe the question should be, what is UNIFIL's task in order for us to even find an alternative? Okay, that too. Well, 1701 in 2006 tried to do something else, tried to say, let's give more power to an international force, but didn't say all the way what this international force is required to do. And there is an internal contradiction in the wording of that resolution. And therefore, this is why there is a disagreement between the Israelis and the others. What is UNIFIL's task? If we take the Israeli position for a moment and we say that their mandate was to disarm Hezbollah south of the Litani, then UNIFIL got in our way trying to do that during the war, and they also concealed Hezbollah's military activity in open areas that really could have been entered. There was no reason not to. Under their noses, training went on, weapons were hidden. All of that was designed to be used for Hezbollah's incursion into Israel. So who needs to disarm Hezbollah? Personally, I think it has to be tremendous pressure applied by an international mechanism, the United States and France and others, together with the Lebanese. But as Tal says, we're not sure that this is enough. There's not always a solution that is available. I, over the years, have said, okay, UNIFIL can give us 1,000 soldiers instead of 10,000, and they will be the mediators when things happen on the ground, because ultimately we're on the border and, there's flooding here and trash over there, and somebody needs to be able to talk with both parties. But after I saw what happened here during the war, I think it's just not good enough. I mean, we can establish a different international platform, but this particular one is not good for us. Wait, let me ask, within UNIFIL's mechanism, in your opinion, is there a mole, Hezbollah mole? I don't know. I really don't know why UNIFIL is collaborating with Hezbollah. I've looked for various reasons over the years. None of the reasons I found was convincing enough, so I'm not going to share them with you. And there was one last question there at the back, and then we'll move on to the next panel. I wanted to ask you to address briefly the possibility that existed of a massive strategic surprise in the north, as happened in the south. For 18 months, we've been talking about all the failures and all these misperceptions with regard to the south. And you actually were on it for years before that. But according to what I understand, we almost reached catastrophic circumstances. So is there any real soul searching? Is it really the same in the south and in the north, or is this a different matter? This is a very painful issue for several reasons. First of all, as a resident of the north, I feel that we were just lucky. I don't know if there's any investigations and inquiries about this. I have no idea. I hope there are. Tal and I also, we don't know, or I don't know why Hezbollah did not enter on October 7th at 6:29. There's all kinds of possible reasons. But I think it makes no difference, because Hezbollah was 100% ready to enter on October 7th at 6:29, and there must have been some sort of a decision or a surprise there. I have no idea. And then there was a dilemma. In the first weeks, I think there was a very big dilemma, a ping pong between the Iranians and Hezbollah of whether or not to enter. And in fact, if they had entered, they would not have succeeded as much as Hamas. And I guess they didn't want that. So we're very lucky. We at the Alma Center talked about it. Tal talked about it. We wrote it in our documents. You can make inquiries and see it. There will be an investigation that will be published, and it will show it. And this is very sad. We find it very sad that even though we saw them ready on the fence, it was clear to anybody living in the north and looking in that direction. We knew what was going on, and the IDF was not prepared to protect the towns. I don't want to talk about the Israeli side as much, what happened here from the IDF's perspective, but I do want to support what Sarit said. Hezbollah was ready to invade the Galilee immediately. I can say that again, according to what we understand and what we understood since the end of 2022 through 2023, and it became especially clear towards the summer. It was a clear statement that we put out in Alma Center. We said it's a matter of after the holidays, the high holidays, Hezbollah may choose to perform an extreme move and invade the Galilee. Okay, so we'll stop the questions now. Tali, please join us.
Thank you very much, Tal and Sarit.
It's full of upheaval regarding American policy in the Middle East. In almost every area, we witnessed surprises during President Trump's visit to the Gulf. I would like to invite